of American history as we know it. Germany, of course, gets... Oh, so going back to... Sorry. Pardon me. There might be some notes that I'm forgetting about 1776. Oh, well, most notably, lets you know a little bit about George Washington. So Washington was fairly religious, and he did celebrate Christmas. In fact, once he rode into Mount Vernon on a camel on Christmas. Yeah, that's a fun little anecdote. But more importantly, thinking back to the Revolution, when did Washington cross the Delaware in the Trenton? Of course, the whole class knows this. That was on Christmas. So it lets you know Christmas used to be celebrated, but back in the middle 19th century, it was not revered. It was not revered in a religious way, and it was not revered nearly as is today in a secular way. It was a merry time. It was a time of families coming together, and from the historical records, there was a lot of alcohol involved. There was a lot of inebriation going on Christmas, usually, in the you know, when it really picked up as a holiday in the 19th century. I'm probably, so this is what I'm going to just peek at the notes real quick. Oh, one big difference about how Christmas was celebrated in early America is very, very important. I'm not sure how much this has to do with it having more of a religious tone or a secular tone, but the South tended to celebrate it more. Now, I'm not saying the South took it to heart and kept the thought of the birth of Christ as the primary driving force behind the holiday either. I'm not saying that they were necessarily more religious. Okay, so, you know, as most people know, there was a big religious revival going on at this time in America, and as can be expected, there was a split. So you can't really say, nobody can really honestly say that either North or South was really more or less religious on the other, but they were very different strains. And in the South, it did tend to be celebrated more around the time of the Civil War than Christmas was celebrated up in the North. In fact, I don't want to say at the time of the Civil War, but before the Civil War, let's say between the Revolution into the antebellum years, it was frowned upon and shunned upon in many places in the North. In fact, in Boston, you could be fined for celebrating Christmas. So that's also something important to know, and something important for history to know, because today lots of people like to wear different hats when it's convenient, you know, and take up the different causes when it's convenient. So I'm just going to put that out there. The North was not really happy about celebrating Christmas in America's early history. I've got to kind of wrap this up. I'm looking at the clock. Yeah. Let's move on to the last segment. I guess you'd say lesser but still very important influences in Christmas. So going around the turn of the century, after the Civil War into the 20th century, we had a man named Frederick August Otto Schwarz, who of course was German. A German American. And the curious part about this was he was actually a German Jew who was a famous toy maker. As everybody knows, F.A.O. Schwarz is more popularly known as the legendary American toy maker who was most of its course of its history based in New York City, in Manhattan, and featured in the movie Big with Tom Hanks. Here's some fun history though. What most people don't know is that Frederick Otto Schwarz built his business in Baltimore first. As I like to say lately, and as you guys will hear me say more and more, all roads lead back to the Civil War and to Baltimore. It's really crazy, but they all do. You got F.A.O. Schwarz, you got so much. You got George Peabody, who I keep meaning to get back to, but I'm gonna get back to Peabody more. But that is sidetracking, so away from Peabody. So you had F.A.O. Schwarz. He was extremely prominent because he came of age at a time when things like toys were novel. Okay, now, I mean, there were wooden toys and stuff like that before, but I'm talking about on a commercial level that could be sold in retail and bought en masse by, not all, but many Americans. That credit for toys does go to Frederick Otto Schwarz, and Christmas was very central to his business over the years. So I'm going to include Frederick August Otto Schwarz as a as like, you know, your number 4, number 5, number 6 influence in Christmas in America. And lastly, I'm gonna finish off with a man named Robert May, who, interestingly enough, was also Jewish. Now, he actually hid that by and large, and later in his life, just as a side note, he actually converted to Catholicism. But Robert May was an ad man from Montgomery Ward, and he gets credit for writing Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, interestingly enough, using a German name. So you've got Robert May, who writes, now he gets credit for the story and the character of Rudolph. It so happened that he had a successful brother who was a songwriter, and that man was named Johnny Marks. Johnny Marks took it and turned it into song. He did not sing it. This is a little confusing. He hands it off to, oh dear, I'm not good with old American singers. Gene Autry. Whew. Didn't have to look. One's on the cheat sheet. So, Robert May writes the story of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, who is very central to today's Christmas. If you stop and think about it for just a second, Rudolph is very, very central. He takes place right behind Santa in today's story of American Christmas. So Robert May writes Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. His brother-in-law, Johnny Marks, turns it into song and hands it off to Gene Autry. That's a little before my time, Gene Autry. So that is my version, my condensed version of the history of Christmas in America as we know it, largely being owed to the Civil War, largely being owed to the Germans. Quite interesting. There's a lot more to learn. As always, I'm giving you a few minutes worth, where actually this has turned out to be a lot longer. I just saw the time. But there's still a lot more to learn. I certainly suggest you research it more. It's a lot of fun, a lot interesting. And Merry Christmas to everybody of all kinds, all around the world, all ages. If you don't celebrate it, I don't care. Merry Christmas to you. Peace, blessings, and love, and we'll see you on the next one.